There's a hole in the ground behind my grandmother's kitchen, 38 inches across, 5 feet deep. Walled with flat dolomite rock, she and my grandfather pried out of the hillside above the house, one sled load at a time, the year my father was born. There's an oak lid over it, and a wheat sack full of straw laid on top of the lid. Under all that, there's a stoneware crock. And in the crock, in the third week of August in Carter County, Missouri, with the porch thermometer showing 96 in the shade, there's butter. Firm butter. Butter you have to put a little weight behind to cut. That hole has no motor, no compressor, no cord running anywhere. It's never been plugged into one thing in 90 years. It carried that woman through 41 summers.
My name is Verna Ward. I'm 63 years old. I was raised 11 miles off the Current River, and my grandmother was Verna Ward, born 1908, farmed 110 acres of hillside and bottom that never once made anybody rich. She did not have grid power in that kitchen until 1951. The co-op line came up our hollow 12 years after it reached town, which is how it went out here. Before 1951, that hole did the work. After 1951, she kept right on using it. And I want you to notice that. She had a refrigerator sitting there humming, and she still walked out the back door with a crock. I dug my first one in the summer of 1974. I was 11. I dug it wrong, in the wrong place, and she made me fill it back in and start over. I've built 9 since. 2 of them failed. I'm going to tell you exactly how they failed, because that's worth more to you than the 7 that didn't. Now, before we go another step, I have to fix the title, because I'd rather lose you in 2 minutes than lie to you for 20. She did not keep sweet milk cold for a week in that hole. Nobody in these hills did. Anybody who tells you otherwise is selling something. What she kept was butter. 2-3 weeks at a run. And the milk she kept sweet for about a day and a half, and then she let it turn, on purpose, into something she wanted more than she wanted milk. That second half is the part that got lost. It's also the more useful half. Stay with me. By the end, you'll have the depth, the container, what it runs at a hardware store this week, the one mistake that ruins the whole business, and the honest limit of what a hole in the ground will and will not do for you. You've got exactly 1 cold box in your house. Go look at it. Everything perishable you own is inside that one machine. Milk, eggs, meat, the insulin, if there's insulin, every leftover, all of it. 1 appliance, 1 circuit, 1 line coming in off 1 pole. That's not a system. That's a single point of failure with a light bulb in it. And you know what it feels like when it quits, because ice storms out here take the power 3 and 4 days at a stretch. The hum stops. The house goes quiet in a way that puts something cold on the back of your neck. 18 hours later, you get the smell. The federal guidance is 4 hours. 4. A closed refrigerator holds safe temperature roughly 4 hours after the power goes. A full freezer buys you 48. Past that, you throw it out or you gamble. 4 hours of margin for everything you eat. Verna had no such cliff. She had a system that got gradually worse instead of instantly worthless, and there is an enormous difference between those two things. That difference is this whole video. Your refrigerator is the only thing in your house that runs 8,760 hours a year. Every hour there is. It never stops. A decent full-size unit made in the last 10 years pulls somewhere around 400 kilowatt hours a year. Per the Energy Information Administration's Electric Power Monthly this spring, the national average residential rate is about 18.8 cents a kilowatt hour. That's roughly $75 a year forever to hold 1 box at 37 degrees. If yours is the one that came with the place, the one from 2004 with the ice maker that quit, that's closer to 1,100 kilowatt hours. Call it $200 a year. 200 a year. 200. But the money's the smaller problem. Here's the bigger one. That machine's got a compressor, a sealed refrigerant loop, a control board, a defrost heater, and a fan. 5 things that fail. When one fails, the whole box goes to room temperature. There's no partial credit. A refrigerator doesn't wear down gentle. It quits. And then it's a service call and a control board that costs better than half of a new unit, which is the arithmetic that puts a working steel cabinet out on the curb. Verna's hole had no moving parts. It couldn't break because there was nothing in it to break. Its performance moved with the season, and I'll be specific about that in a minute, but it never went to 0. She wasn't behind the times. She was redundant.
The hole behind that kitchen wasn't an invention. It was the small, cheap version of something that ran across the whole Ozark Plateau. We sit on karst. Karst is limestone and dolomite country, where slightly acid rainwater has been eating channels down through the rock for millions of years, hollowing out caves and sinkholes and springs. Missouri has better than 7,000 recorded caves. And where those channels come back out at the surface, you get spring water. 4 miles south of Van Buren, in my county, is Big Spring. It puts out an average of 286 million gallons a day out of the base of a dolomite bluff. That water comes in as rain up to 40 miles west and takes months to travel through the rock. The Department of Conservation ran a dye trace once. Dye dropped in near Mountain View, 39.5 miles off, showed up at Big Spring 16 days later. Longest groundwater trace in the country. And here's the number that matters to you. Big Spring runs 58 degrees. In February, in August, 58 every day of the year, since before anybody was here to write it down.
Every family in these hills that had a spring on their place built a spring house or a spring box over it, a stone or plank enclosure with the water running through a trough in the floor, and the milk cans and butter crocks set down in that running water. Alley Spring, up in Shannon County, has the mill from 1894 still standing over it. There are spring house foundations in this county older than the county. If you had no spring, you dug. And that's what Verna's people did, up on the hillside, away from the water. Here was her week, as I watched it as a boy. Morning milk came in warm, near 100 degrees, straight out of the cow. It went into a shallow, wide pan on the porch first, never straight down the hole. Once the pan knocked the field heat off it, the milk went into a covered crock and down. That crock came back up inside 36 hours, no exceptions. Whatever hadn't been drunk by then went into a separate crock, set out on purpose, and turned into clabber. Clabber is raw milk allowed to sour under its own native lactic acid bacteria until it sets up thick, about like a loose yogurt. It wasn't a failure, it was the plan. Clabber went into biscuits and cornbread, got poured to the hogs, or got churned. That's where real buttermilk comes from, the liquid left after churning. The butter is what the hole was really for. Salted butter, packed into a crock, went down and stayed down 2 and 3 weeks and came up firm. 2 things were happening down in that ground. One of them she couldn't have named, the other one she absolutely could. Here's the principle, and it's worth slowing down for. Soil is a poor conductor of heat. Slow. Physicists call that property thermal diffusivity, how fast a temperature change travels through a material. Soil's is low. Heat has to fight its way down. Because of that, the swing you feel at the surface gets crushed on the way down. Soil scientists call the depth where that happens damping depth, where a surface temperature swing has been cut to roughly 1/3 of what it was up top. Below that, it keeps shrinking fast. Go deep enough, and the swing is gone entirely. Down 30 feet, the ground sits at almost exactly the mean annual air temperature of wherever you're standing. Not the summer number, not the winter number. The average of all 12 months rolled into one. For the south-central Ozarks, that number is right around 56 degrees, which is why Big Spring runs 58. That spring isn't magic. It's just deep groundwater reporting the annual average back to you, out loud, at 286 million gallons a day. Now, you are not digging 30 feet, you're digging 5. So let me be honest about what 5 feet actually gives you, because this is where most videos on this subject start lying. At 5 feet, the swing isn't gone. It's damped, and it's delayed. That delay is the second thing happening down there, thermal lag. July's heat doesn't reach 5 feet until September. January's cold doesn't get there until March. So Verna's hole ran about like this. Late April, 52 degrees. Deep summer into September, 58 to 62. Winter, mid-40s. And it never froze, because the frost line in South Missouri is only about 2 feet down. Frost line is the depth your ground freezes solid in a bad winter. Every footing on every house in a cold state is required by code to sit below it, because freezing water in soil expands and lifts whatever's above it. Down here, that's 24 to 30 inches. In northern Minnesota, it's 5 feet.
Your county building office gives you that number over the phone in 2 minutes, free. And it decides whether this works where you live. And now the part I want you to sit still for. 60 degrees is not 37 degrees. USDA's line for safe refrigeration is 40 degrees or below. A hole in Ozark ground does not get there, and I'm not going to pretend to you that it does. 60 degrees is a slowdown, not a stop, which is exactly why butter works and sweet milk doesn't. And it's why I use salted butter and not sweet. The salt runs 1.5% to 2%, and that's enough to pull down the free water that bacteria need to live on. Verna wasn't seasoning that butter, she was engineering it, the same way a man salts a country ham. If you've kept a spring house, a root cellar, a buried cooler, anything in this family, put your actual measured temperature and the month in the comments. Real numbers out of real ground, not what people repeat. There's no conspiracy here, and I won't insult you with one. What happened is documented, it's dull, and it's worse than a conspiracy because it worked. In December of 1933, Roosevelt signed Executive Order 6514 and created the Electric Home and Farm Authority, housed under the TVA. Its one job was to lend rural families money, cheap, small down payment, long terms, to buy electric appliances, ranges, water heaters, refrigerators, first and above all. Read that again. A federal agency, capitalized by the Treasury, and backed with tens of millions from the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, whose specific purpose was to finance a refrigerator into your great-grandmother's kitchen. Why? Because in 1935, about 90% of American townhomes had electricity, and about 10% of farms did. 10%. Running line out to a hollow like ours cost real money, and no company was going to spend it for 4 light bulbs and a radio. That line only paid for itself if the family on the end of it bought something that pulled current all day long. There is exactly one appliance that pulls current all day long. The trade calls that load building. You don't sell electricity. You sell the machine that requires electricity, and then the electricity sells itself, every hour, forever, and never needs a salesman again. Nobody suppressed the hole in the ground. Nobody had to. They made the alternative cheap on credit, then made it the mark of a modern house. And inside of 2 generations, no woman was teaching her daughter how to run a milk crock. The knowledge wasn't taken. It was outcompeted, deliberately, with federal financing. And that same box is in your kitchen now, running 8,760 hours a year, at 18.8 cents a kilowatt hour, and climbing. The residential rate is up about 25% in 4 years. The loan on Verna's got paid off in 1958. The line item never did. 1 hardware store trip. Real numbers, and I'll tell you where to spend and where not to. A container. The one thing worth money. Food grade, non-porous, rigid. A 2-gallon stoneware crock runs $30 to $50. A food grade 5-gallon bucket with a gasketed lid runs $8 to $12 at any farm store. Stoneware's better. It carries thermal mass and rides through the daily lid opening, but the bucket works. Don't use one that held anything but food. A butter keeper. If butter is your target, and it ought to be, get a French butter crock, a beurrier à eau. 2 pieces of stoneware. Butter packs into an inverted bell, and the bell sits down in a shallow well of water. That water is an oxygen seal, and oxygen is what turns butter rancid. $15 to $25. Clean gravel. 4 to 6 inches in the bottom for drainage. 1 bag, $6. A lid. Scrap exterior plywood or 2x lumber, cut 4 inches wider than the hole all the way around. Then a second cover on top, inch rigid foam board, a folded moving blanket, or a sack of straw the way she did it. $10 to $15. A thermometer, not optional. A wireless probe with a remote readout is $15 to $20. Buy it. You're going to be making food safety decisions, and you will not guess right. Salt, plain, non-iodized, $3. $30 to $45 with the bucket, $65 to $80 if you go stoneware. The digging's free. About 2 hours with a round point shovel and a post-hole digger if your ground is decent. In Ozark rock, plan on 3, and plan on a mattock. Site it on the north side of a building, north side. That ground is in shade every hour of every day, and shaded soil runs several degrees under bare, sun-baked soil at the same depth. Down here, that's not a nicety. It's the difference between 58 and 64.
Don't site it under a downspout, at the foot of a grade, or anywhere water stands after a rain. A pit that floods is a pit that grows things. Call 811 before you dig. Free, 3 business days. People hit gas lines doing exactly this. Dig 8 to 10 inches wider than your container, deep enough that the container's lid sits 4 to 6 inches below grade. In the Ozarks, I want you at 5 feet minimum, and 6 if your back and your rock will allow it. Every additional foot buys real degrees, and down here we need them. 4 to 6 inches of clean gravel in the bottom. That's your drainage, and it's the step people skip. Set the container in. Backfill around it, tamping in 3-inch lifts. You want contact. Air gaps are insulation, and insulation is your enemy here. You're trying to let the earth touch your food, thermally speaking. Rigid lid over the top, oversized, resting on the soil, and not on the container rim. Then the insulating layer over that, foam board, blanket, straw sack, which is what keeps the daily surface swing from reaching down. Mound soil around the edge so rain sheds away. Run the thermometer probe down inside and leave it a full week before you put $1 of food in it. Read it at 3 in the afternoon, the hottest part of the day. That number, yours, not mine, is your operating temperature. Then load it. Salted butter in the keeper, packed tight, no air pockets, water changed every other day. Hard cheese, eggs, potatoes, onions, turnips, cured meat, beer, if it comes to that. Milk goes in already cooled, covered, and comes out inside 36 hours, or it becomes clabber. At 60 degrees, that isn't a guideline. That's the rule. Quick, in the order I see them. Too shallow. 3 feet isn't 5 feet. 3 feet rides with the weather and gives you nothing in August. Sunny side. South-facing bare ground can run 8 to 12 degrees warmer at shallow depth. No gravel. Water pools. The container sits in it. The seal fails from underneath. No thought to condensation. Warm, humid air comes down, hits a cold surface, beads up. Wipe the underside of that lid every time you open it. In an Ozark August, the humidity will do this every single day. Warm food. This is the big one, and it's what kills people's faith in the whole method. Put a 70-degree jar into a 58-degree pit, and that pit has to shed all that heat out through soil, and soil is slow. That's the whole principle running against you now. 6 hours easy. 6 hours in the danger zone. Cool everything on the counter or in cold water first. Opening it all day. Every open is a warm air exchange. Go down once. Get everything at once. And the mistake underneath all of them, treating 60 degrees like 40 degrees. It is not. Don't put fresh meat, poultry, fish, cooked leftovers, cut melon, or anything carrying a "keep refrigerated" label into a ground pit and expect it to be all right tomorrow. Butter, hard cheese, eggs, roots, cured goods. That's the list. Everything else goes in the machine. That paragraph right there separates the people who use one of these for 30 years from the people who use one for a summer and quit. The pit has seasons, and you work with them. April and May are its best window. The ground's still carrying winter and running 8 or 10 degrees under the air. That's when it outperforms everything. September is its worst. July's heat has finally arrived at 5 feet. Thermal lag, working against you. Plan for the pit to be at its warmest right when the weather's turned pleasant, which feels backwards and is correct. Winter, it holds mid-40s, and it's the best it ever gets. And down here it won't freeze. Up north, above the frost line, it will. And freezing splits stoneware. Know your number. Twice a year, pull everything. Take the container out, scrub it with hot water and a stiff brush, and set it in full sun to dry a day. Sunlight is free sanitation. Check the gravel still drains. Retamp what's settled. Keep a pencil and an index card in a jar by the lid. Date, time, temperature. 6 months of that and you'll know your own ground better than any chart I could hand you. Now here's the thing I want you to carry out of this. That mound of dirt with a crock in it and the geothermal heat pump on a new house over toward Poplar Bluff are the same machine. Identical principle. The earth holds the annual average, and both of them are just borrowing it. One costs $35 and a Saturday. The other one costs $25,000 and comes with a warranty. And if your pit runs hot, if your card says 64 in September,
The fix is a wet burlap sack laid over the crock, and it'll pull you down 4 or 5 degrees. That's the same thing that happens to the sweat on the back of your neck when you're throwing hay in July. Water leaving a surface takes heat with it, which is the exact same physics a schoolteacher in northern Nigeria named Mohammed Ba Abba built into the pot-in-pot cooler in 1995. 2 clay pots, wet sand packed between them, a damp cloth over the top. It won the Rolex Award for Enterprise, and it's kept vegetables and insulin cold across 5 African countries. The Egyptians were doing it with water jars around 2500 BC. An Ozark woman, a Nigerian potter, and a pharaoh's kitchen staff all solved the same problem the same way. Nobody was primitive. The physics were sitting there the whole time, free, for anybody who was paying attention. One thing, not 10.
Saturday morning. Dig 1 hole on the north side of your house or your shed, 5 feet deep, wide enough for a 5-gallon food-grade bucket with 6 inches to spare all the way around. 4 inches of clean gravel in the bottom. Bucket in, backfill tamped tight, plywood lid, foam board on top of that. Bucket's $9 at a farm supply. Gravel $6. Plywood you likely have laying out back. The probe thermometer is $18, and it's the one piece you cannot skip. Call 811 on Thursday so you're clear to dig by Saturday. 2 hours with a shovel, 3 if you're in rock. Then put nothing in it for 1 week, just the thermometer. Read it every afternoon at 3 and write the number on a card. At the end of that week, you'll know your own ground temperature, the real one, in your soil, in your month, not mine, not a chart's. If it comes back under 60, put a pound of salted butter in a French butter keeper down there and go look at it in 2 weeks. It'll be firm, and it'll be good. And your refrigerator will be working a little less to hold it. That's the whole thing. $35 and 1 Saturday to stop having exactly 1 cold box. Next week I'll show you what Verna did with eggs, water glassing, in pickling lime, in a crock down that same hole. 8 months of good eggs, no refrigeration, off a spring surplus. Highest return of any preservation method she used, and there's hardly anybody under 60 left who's seen it done. Dig the hole first. The eggs go in the same hole. She used to tell me the ground was the oldest icebox there is, and the only one a man never had to pay for twice. Put a thermometer in your dirt. Find out what you've already got.